My name's Angelo, and welcome to We Want Picks. This is the only channel dedicated to UFC fight picks and DraftKings lineups run by MMA insiders and professional fighters. Every week, I join Dan Kramer and Nick Newell, two longtime professional fighters that have fought at the highest levels on the planet, as well as Jacob Lyons, a skinny kid from Indiana. So join us every single week for our full fight card breakdowns, our individual fight card breakdowns, our betting guide, and our DraftKings lineups. UFC 264 is behind us. UFC Vegas 31 is in front of us. So it was an awesome event, and we're moving on to the next one. I am here alone. Just me, solo, Big Ange, by himself. Danny Boy is on a family vacation, but he will be here for our Friday final DraftKings, final betting, all of that. I had to change the time that we normally film. So we normally go live Tuesday nights, but I'm doing this Tuesday morning because I have to go on a work trip, and Jacob could not meet the schedule. My fault for changing it. It is what it is. Show goes on. Just me. I'm going to walk through this entire fight card, break it all down for you, give us your picks, our plays, DraftKings, Monkey Knife Fights, bets, the whole nine. And first up at UFC Vegas 31, we have Alan Baudot versus Rodrigo Nascimento. This is a weird matchup. It's an interesting matchup. It's a weird matchup. Two big boy heavyweights. Alan Baudot is 3-2 in his last 5. Rodrigo Nascimento is 4-1 in his last 5. Both of these guys have a 100% finish rate, kill or be killed, feast or famine out of both of them. But they do have different styles. Rodrigo Nascimento is a very aggressive striker, but he is a grappler at heart with very good submissions. But his striking style is he just marches forward, big bombs. He clinches up to get the takedown. He's very big. His submissions are very, very good. If he's standing, he will get sucked into a firefight, and that may not go his well because Alan Baudot, although he is not great on the ground, he is a competent striker. He also has that 100% finish rate, and he is teammates with Cyril Gane. So you know he's getting good technical striking looks in training and in practice, and he has high-level teammates. With that being said, he's not the most technical guy in the world. He is very, very unorthodox on his feet, throws anything he wants. This includes spinning, flying knees, anything he wants to do, he does it on his feet. And it is hard to game plan for somebody like that because he is unorthodox. He'll do whatever. And again, Rodrigo marches forward and can get sucked into a fire. If he gets into a fire fight with somebody like Alan Baudot, who does the crazy stuff, he may be in trouble. There's a very clear path to victory here, and that is Rodrigo Nascimento taking it to the ground, getting a submission, beating him up there. That is like so unbelievably clear that is the game plan and that is the path. The odds makers know it. Everybody knows that that's what he needs to do. But again, he could get suckered in to a firefight on his feet and get caught, especially because they're heavyweights. But I think that is a trap. Do not bet on Alan Baudot. Let me walk through DraftKings and Monkey Knife Fights. So DraftKings-wise, I am not touching Rodrigo Nascimento at $9,000. I think he's going to win this fight. The path to victory is very clear, and there is a good chance he scores a ton of points. So I know I'm saying the opposite of what I just said, but you know, both of these guys have 100% finish rate. So if he wins, you imagine it's by finish, most likely submission. With that being said, these are heavyweights. Nascimento does bang and get suckered into those sort of striking battles, and Alan Baudot has power, and he's so unorthodox. It is not crazy. He will throw a flying knee while Nascimento's on his way in, or a wild spinning back elbow or something crazy like that while Nascimento is working on his way in. So the 100% finish rate is exciting, but it is both sides. $9,000 is a lot for a heavyweight that could very easily get stopped. I do have some bets on this. I've already placed some bets. We'll do our full betting breakdown as well. I have the under on rounds and does not go the distance. I didn't get the best odds in the world on that, but I'm positive this fight will not go the distance. It is either Rodrigo by submission or Alan Baudot can get himself a crazy sort of knockout or TKO doing the weird, nasty stuff he does on his feet. Monkey Knife Fight, it's a hard line. because 22.5 is nothing. I would definitely go more on Alan Baudot. That's not a lot, and especially he does the crazy stuff, and he's busy. Rodrigo Nascimento marches forward, just comes forward. So he's busy as well, but 45.5 is a good amount of strikes. That's saying that this will go 2+ rounds. But again, this is every single strike, so if he gets on top, everything matters. Every little pitter-patter to loosen up. So I think the play is more and more. And if you want to play that line, hit it up at weonpicks.com, MKF. We have a whole Monkey Knife Fight section, how to do it and how to play it. And if you watched our breakdown this past week, you know that every single person, myself and everybody who watched, killed it last week, tripled our money playing Monkey Knife Fights. This fight, it's a little bit of a trickier line. I told you my bets. If you want to play some of those bets as well, weonpicks.com. Once you get there, there's a whole section dedicated to betting. Next up at UFC Vegas 31, we have Francisco Figueiredo versus Malcolm Gordon. It is not that Figueiredo, and I'm sure you know that. It is his brother. So Figueiredo, the longtime dominant champion who just lost his belt, this is his brother. So you can take the champ, take about 25% off of everything. His cardio, his power, his athleticism, his speed. Take 25% of all of it away, and you have Francisco Figueiredo. He is just a lesser version of his brother, but he still possesses those same skills and power, and he's still a very, very good fighter. Francisco Figueiredo is 3-1-1 in his last 5. Malcolm Gordon, 3-2 in his last 5, coming off of 2 losses, both by stoppage. He's very, very chinny, and he knows he's chinny. So Francisco Figueiredo, again, he is just a lesser version of his brother, but he fights a very similar way. He does have aggressive forward striking. He does have legitimate power, and he is very strong, but he is slow. And that could be a problem in a fight like this with Malcolm Gordon. Malcolm Gordon is fast. Malcolm Gordon has good striking. Malcolm Gordon is a black belt in BJJ. He has very, very solid kicks, but he has a very high guard. He knows that he's chinny. He knows he gets knocked out. So he fights like this to protect his head because he does know that he has issues. Figueiredo has a ton of power, so I suspect Malcolm Gordon will be even more sort of hyper protective. People are going to tell you about Malcolm Gordon's reach, and he's longer, but it doesn't matter. Your reach doesn't matter if this is your stance. If you're worried about getting struck and this is your stance, the reach doesn't matter. He doesn't use his reach. He doesn't stay back and jab and keep at the distance. This stance does open Malcolm Gordon up for takedowns. He is faster. I mentioned he does have the reach advantage, but that is a non-factor whatsoever in my opinion. And again, he has that glass jaw. So Figueiredo, his game plan is just come forward, throw big, heavy punches. If you land, great. If you don't, duck under that high guard, shoot a takedown. Malcolm Gordon is a black belt, but he is not throw up wild submissions off his back, catch you in a scramble black belt. Figueiredo is also a black belt, and he will be more than competent on top to avoid something on the bottom. I think Figueiredo is absolutely the pick here. I think he absolutely is the pick. But Malcolm Gordon does have a path to victory. He can strike with the distance, use the distance, touch up Figueiredo, and get his own takedown. If he's on top, his BJJ is much stronger. He can win rounds, and Francisco Figueiredo on the other side is not going to create a scramble and work his way back over to a sweep. He's just not that fast. So again, Malcolm Gordon's path to victory is working his own takedown and win this fight on top. Francisco Figueiredo has multiple paths to victory, including knockout and getting on top himself. So Figueiredo's the pick. With that being said, I couldn't decide on my lineup. I had him in my lineup, then I took him out for Vieira. Then I put him back in, then I take him out. So I think at $8,900, he is a good value because Gordon is so chinny, does get stopped. I think he's a good value. Like I said, I keep messing with it in my lineup. I think $8,900 is worth the price. These odds are solid. Minus 310, that's probably where that should be, but plus 260. Listen, Malcolm Gordon has very good kicks. He's very, very fast, and he's a jiu-jitsu black belt. So I'm going as far as say that he's an incredibly live dog. I'm not going to jump on a hype train and throw money on him, and he's going to do this, but he is live. There is a chance here. He does have a path to victory, but the pick for me is Figueiredo. I keep messing with my lineup. We'll see how it gets later in the week. Monkey knife fights, I'm going more. I don't think if there's a stoppage, it's Francisco Figueiredo knocking out Malcolm Gordon. And that is very possible. But I don't think it'll be early. And I told you, Malcolm Gordon is very aware of his chin. Very aware of it. High guard, keeps his head back. He knows where he's weak, and he protects that chin. So I think more is the monkey knife fight play here. If you're worried about it, wait and see where the line goes. As money comes in on those lines, they go up or down. They adjust just like if it was betting or anything else that is line-based. So if you don't love that line, see where the money comes. Maybe it drops and more is easier. Maybe it skyrockets and less is easier. I think more is the play because I don't necessarily think this will go the distance, but I do think it will be a busier type fight. I don't have a bet on this just yet. I'm going to see what the odds do. I don't like Figueiredo at -310. I think those are correct odds, but I'm not going to risk 3 times my money on him. And I don't think Malcolm Gordon is live enough just yet. If he was a +400, you got to give that a chance. So either way, DraftKings, I'm a big maybe. Monkey knife fights on more. No bets just yet. We'll see some of the props, what those look like, where I can go with that. Maybe the under on rounds, but we'll take a look and see where it takes us. Next up at UFC Vegas 31, we have Miles Johns versus Anderson Dos Santos. Miles Johns 4-1 in his last 5, 11-1 overall. Anderson Dos Santos 3-2 in his last 5, 21-8 overall. This is sort of a matchup made for Miles Johns to see how tough he actually is. I feel like the UFC says Miles Johns is a prospect. Let's give him a veteran with a bunch of experience who's really tough, and let's see what happens here. I do think these odds are wide. I think Anderson Dos Santos is much more live, and I don't think Miles Johns is almost a 2-1 favorite. So we'll start with Anderson Dos Santos. Anderson Dos Santos is a very good BJJ black belt. He has big, heavy strikes, but he uses them just to work in to try to get himself a takedown. And he does have takedowns. He's not Ryan Hall. He is not rolling around on his back like a turtle upside down. He does have actual takedowns. They're not spectacular, though. And Miles Johns is a wrestler. Miles Johns has legitimate takedowns. Anderson Dos Santos, just okay takedown defense. So you have to imagine Anderson Dos Santos is perfectly happy being on the ground. He wants to get it to the ground. My concern here is that Miles Johns will take him down. I know that's going to happen. I think Anderson knows that's going to happen. The problem is when he takes him down, Anderson's going to be on his back. And how good is his jiu-jitsu off of his back? Miles Johns, very good, strong grappler with his own heavy hands and explosive speed. The wrestling is the core at everything he does. He is coming off of a spectacular knockout win. I mentioned he has very good wrestling, very heavy hands. This is a step up in competition, and his athleticism is going to be a big difference here. He's by far the better athlete. And the wrestling that he has will dictate where the fight goes. Anderson Dos Santos is going to want this on the ground, but he can't necessarily dictate that that's where it's going to go because he doesn't have as good of the offensive wrestling, and his takedown defense is okay, but Miles Johns is a strong wrestler, so that could be a problem. But Miles Johns may get in trouble with Anderson's veteran crafty. I don't like a bet on either of these guys. I don't like either of these guys in DraftKings. I do like Anderson Dos Santos in this matchup, and I'll tell you why. Miles Johns is more athletic. Miles Johns has the better wrestling. But Anderson has the experience. We've seen Miles Johns with some fight IQ gaps in the past. Anderson has pretty solid fight IQ, and he has that veteran savvy. So I think he is just going to come forward with those big, heavy bombs, back up Miles Johns, and then Anderson can dictate the takedown, or at least attempt to. So Miles Johns is a wrestler, but I've said this 1,000,000 times. It is easier to finish a bad offensive takedown than it is to defend a bad offensive takedown. Finishing is easier than defending. So if Anderson Dos Santos comes in there, just gets a big heavy clinch that he's set up with heavy strikes, just works his way down to the legs, he may not be the wrestler that Miles Johns is, but once he's on those hips, if he starts moving, it's a lot harder for Miles Johns to defend it than it is for Anderson to finish it. So I do think Anderson's jiu-jitsu will get this done. I do not see a stoppage here. I think this will go the distance. I think it'll be a very close fight. I'm not betting on this fight. I don't have either one of these guys in my lineup, but I do like Anderson dos Santos as the pick. I think his veteran savvy, honestly, will be the difference here. Miles John's athleticism is the one thing that has me concerned, is that he can just sort of force things. When you're that athletic, you can make things happen that shouldn't necessarily happen. I do like Anderson dos Santos. Again, no DraftKings. I don't have a bet just yet. Listen, if a ton of money comes in on Miles Johns and Anderson dos Santos starts jacking up, I may grab him as the underdog. If they flip, I would take Miles Johns as an underdog, but he's not. He's almost a 2-1 favorite. Monkey knife fight, I like the more. I do like the more because, again, it's every single strike. Both of these guys are probably going to be looking to grapple, which means the other person will be pitter-pattering, working, punching to get off of the cage, and the guy on top will be on top, landing his own strikes, and those all add up. So I do like the more in monkey knife fight. Monkey knife fight, you triple your money. If you play more and you hit it, you triple your money. If you play 3 of these and you lose 2, you're even. You lose 1, that means you won 2, you double your money. Monkey knife fight is the easiest money you will ever make playing fantasy while watching fights. Period. End of story. WeWantPicks.com/MKF. Next up at UFC Vegas 31, we have Khalid Taha versus Sergey Morozov. Khalid Taha is 2-1 in his last 5. Sergey Morozov is 4-1 in his last 5, coming off of a loss. Khalid Taha, incredibly tough, and everything he does has power. Power from all angles, every strike, power. He is a kickboxer. He switches up his stance. He has very solid speed. He comes forward and he's not afraid to engage, but he is a good grappler. He just doesn't have great takedowns. So if he gets to the mat, he's a competent grappler. He can get things done, but he doesn't really have the offensive wrestling to get it there. But again, every single thing that guy does has power behind it. Sergey Morozov. Yeah, I'm getting that right. Sergey Morozov is a very good counter striker. He also has good power, and the counter striking is going to be tough for Taha because Khalid Taha comes forward. He comes forward with a ton of power. Sergey Morozov's counter striking, step back, bang, step out, boom. I think that's a really tricky matchup for Khalid. Sergey is training an American top team, so as Dan would tell you, you know he's very, very prepared, and he's training with some of those killer wrestlers there. He also has his own power, and he's good at everything on the mat. Good offensive wrestling, good defensive wrestling, very slick jiu-jitsu. I think Sergey's going to get this done. I have Sergey as my underdog. I already put a money line bet on him. I like him in DraftKings as well. And the reason I like Sergey in this fight is because I think he can sucker Khalid into a stand-up sort of heavy power type exchange, catch him with the counter striking, or drop and shoot his own takedown. I don't think it's going to be very hard for him to get Khalid to overcommit to the striking. And once he overcommits, Sergey's going to do whatever he wants to do. Either counter strike, step out, or drop and shoot in. So I have Sergey winning this. I think he's a very solid underdog in this fight, honestly. I don't have him in my DraftKings lineup because it just didn't work like that for me. And when you see my DraftKings picks, you'll understand why. But I do like him in DraftKings. So I think he's a solid play for you guys if it works for your math. The more is probably the line. 67.5 is a lot for Khalid Taha, but the more is probably the line. I think this goes the distance, and I think it's going to be pretty grapple heavy from Sergey. So he's definitely going to go blow past his 42.5. 67.5 is a lot. So I'm going to say less on Khalid, more on Sergey, because I think Khalid's going to come forward, throw heavy. Sergey's going to counter strike, get it to the ground, and sort of beat him up there. He could get a submission win. I do think Khalid is so incredibly tough. We've seen him take absolute beatings in the past and not stop. But I think that's the play. Less on Khalid because of the counter strike and the grappling, and more on Sergey because of the grappling. I like it for DraftKings. I love Sergey as an underdog. I already put money on that at plus 145. If you can get better odds, if you think that this line's going to go your way, jump on it. I don't. I think most people are going to start thinking along the lines of me. Money's going to come in on Sergey, and his odds are going to go the other direction. Jump on that now at wewantpicks.com/bets. Next up at UFC Vegas 31, we have Amanda Lemos versus Montserrat Ruiz. And this is a wild matchup. An absolutely wild matchup. We have Amanda Lemos, who is a killer striker. Montserrat Ruiz, who is a killer grappler. In the old striker versus grappler matchup, Amanda Lemos 4-1 in her last 5, 9-1 overall. Montserrat Ruiz 10-1 in her last 5. Her only loss is a decision loss. This is a very, very tricky matchup, but I do like Montserrat Ruiz in this. Let me walk through it. So Amanda Lemos, big-time favorite. The reason she's a big-time favorite is she's massive. She's absolutely tremendous. I don't know how she makes the weight. I will be watching the weigh-ins to see how bad it is or isn't, because she is a massive, massive fighter at this weight class. She has incredible power because she's so tremendous, and she has phenomenal Muay Thai striking. She's very, very good on her feet with incredible power and just giant stature. She also does a very good job at keeping it at Muay Thai range. She does a good job keeping the range and keeping the distance. That's a problem for Ruiz. And she needs to stay away in this fight, because if she does allow any gaps at all and allows Ruiz to grab that head, allows Ruiz to get to the legs, she's going to be in trouble. Montserrat Ruiz, you'll see her in DraftKings as Caneo, because that's her nickname. So in DraftKings, you're going to draft her, it's Caneo. Montserrat Ruiz, national world level wrestler. Very, very good wrestler. We had her winning her last fight. She was an underdog in her last fight. We picked her to win. She absolutely dominated, had 285 side headlocks. I coach wrestling. I've coached wrestling for a very long time, and we would always yell at our youth wrestlers when they would go for side headlocks, because you get good at it as a little kid, you keep it forever, and then it ends up being a problem later. It's not a problem for Montserrat Ruiz, though, because she gets them. She grabs that head, pulls it to the ground, ends up in sort of head and arm sign control, and gets those takedowns and dominates once she gets there on top. She's very tough. The problem is she's hittable. And anytime you have somebody as hittable as Montserrat Ruiz, but somebody with as much power as Amanda Lemos, that is a problem, and that's why the odds look like this. The odds makers have said, I get it. Montserrat Ruiz is a nasty wrestler, and if she can get her hands on Amanda Lemos, that's pretty much it. But she's going to get hit on her way in. Amanda Lemos has power for days. We don't think she gets past those hands. I disagree. I think Montserrat Ruiz, just relentless, come forward, get it to the ground at all cost strategy will work for her, because Amanda Lemos is going to be constantly backing up, trying to maintain that range, throwing those big power shots. She's got to gas. She cannot be that tremendous and not gas out. She can't. She's so freaking huge for this weight class. There's just no way that she doesn't gas out. So gas out. I have Montserrat Ruiz winning. I already have a money line on her at plus 400. I've already done that. As soon as the 3.5 bet comes out, I'm grabbing that too. And if you don't know what the 3.5 bet is basically you can buy points on the judges' scorecard. So you total up all of the judges, how they scored every single round for each fighter. You add 3.5 points to that. So your fighter can lose a decision and you still win the bet. The math is you have to win just one round on the judges' scorecards. Montserrat Ruiz will absolutely 100% win a single round. I think she wins the fight, but she'll definitely win a single round. So that's sort of an insurance bet for me. And I think the over on rounds is a solid play as well, because I do think this goes the distance. So again, I'm picking Montserrat Ruiz to win. In order for Montserrat Ruiz to win, she's got to get in close, grapple, and she's just going to beat up Lemos on the ground for 3 full rounds. If you have Amanda Lemos winning, it's because you think she's going to knock out Montserrat Ruiz. So if you're in the Amanda Lemos camp, do not do the over on rounds, because that's going to be a problem. I got to look at the rounds. Some of these fights, the round total is 1.5, not 2.5. If it's 1.5, grab the over no matter who you think wins. Period. End of story. If it's 2.5, under for Lemos, over for Montserrat. But I'm very confident in Montserrat's just relentless, come forward toughness, get the takedown at all costs. She will get hit, and I think that's perfectly fine for her. DraftKings, I have Ruiz $6,900, frees up an enormous amount of money for me to grab some of the other more expensive fighters, especially the main event. The more or less, that is a tricky one. I'm going to go less on Lemos, more on Montserrat. Lemos, if she lands 70 strikes, she's going to knock out Montserrat. So she's not getting to 70. If she lands 70, it's a bad night for me. So she's not going to get there. Montserrat will get to 81.5 because it's just going to be takedowns, busy on top. So I'll do less on Lemos, more on Montserrat. I would have preferred if the Montserrat line was higher, so I could say less because it's probably going to be right there. But I do like Montserrat to take Lemos down, beat her up for 3 rounds. She'll take some punishment on the way in, but I think she's absolutely tough enough to get through that, and it should not be a big problem for her. I love this underdog pick. I'm throwing money on it. I already did the plus 400. I'm grabbing the 3.5, and that's available. UFC 264 was tricky because the underdogs really didn't show up, and my favorite underdog, that fight dropped right before showtime. This is my big underdog. We'll see what happens here. Next up at UFC Vegas 31, we have Daniel Rodriguez versus Preston Parsons. And that is the best image you're going to find of Preston Parsons because this is his UFC debut. This is a pretty short notice fight. I think it's a week, maybe a little bit more than a week. Daniel Rodriguez 4-1 in his last 5. Preston Parsons also 4-1 in his last 5. He's 9-2 overall, and every single one of those 9 wins was by submission. So he is absolutely a finisher. Daniel Rodriguez is a very, very good boxer with great timing and output, and you can see that output with that 96.5 strike line. He comes forward, very, very busy striker. He also works in leg kicks, and he keeps really good range. So he can keep the distance, touch you up with his hands, touch you up with his feet, and continue to circle. And if he keeps this fight on the outside, he absolutely should win. He needs to avoid this getting to the ground. It's not that he's a bum on the ground, but Preston Parsons has proved that he's very capable on the ground. I broke down a bunch of tape of Preston Parsons, and that's what's great about some of these new UFC, UFC newcomers is there is tape out there, especially the American ones, right? A lot of these local promotions, videos are up on YouTube. Some of them are even on Fight Pass. So there's a lot of tape out there. And Preston Parsons is tough as hell. And he's capable on his feet. He's not very technical, but he has no issue coming forward, throwing forward elbows, throwing over the top elbows, punches, kicks, all of the above. He has a very, very good chin. And honestly, I think he's live in this fight. I'm not picking him to win. I'm absolutely not picking him to win. But I think he is live in this fight. I think he deserves better than plus 200. It is short notice, but we have seen over the last few weeks that doesn't matter. UFC debut doesn't matter. We've seen a bunch of killers these last 3 or 4 weeks make their UFC debut and get it done. Not only in a debut, but also on short notice. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and he moves very aggressively. He comes forward very aggressively with his striking. And I mentioned it is a diverse striking skill set. They're big, heavy shots, but their elbows, their knees, their punches. He's very busy when he comes forward. So Daniel Rodriguez is going to have to continue to circle, touch Preston, move out of the way, avoid the forward pressure, and avoid a takedown. If he gets his back put against the cage, if Preston marches forward, gets Daniel's back against the cage, he's going to touch up Daniel on his feet and then drop for a takedown. And once he gets to the ground, Preston will absolutely have the advantage. I do think Daniel Rodriguez can get that done, though. I think he wins the fight. He is my pick. I think he circles well. He'll gauge the timing well. And I think he'll work on Preston's legs to slow him down, to keep him from pressuring forward. So Daniel's my pick. I do not have him in my lineup. I don't have a bet on this just yet. I'll do a little bit of research and see what I want to do bet-wise. Maybe the bet will be Preston Parsons wins by submission, but a decision is no action. Preston Parsons is so tough, and he has a really good chin. I don't think he'll get stopped, right? Anything's possible. I just don't think he'll get stopped. And that bet is awesome because it basically says, hey, if Preston wins by submission, I'll get paid. If he loses a beat-up decision, I get a refund. Didn't matter. Money back. If you like that bet, either for this fight or any fight, WeWantPicks.com/bets. Daniel Rodriguez is my pick. I'm not doing him in DraftKings. Monkey knife fight. I'm going to go less on Rodriguez, more on Parsons. 96.5 is a lot when he's going to be backing up, trying to avoid, shots and takedowns. So I'm going to go under on Daniel Rodriguez and more on Preston's because he does come forward. He is very busy. He may get a takedown, but even if he doesn't, he's just going to march forward, take a beating, and some high volume output. Next up at UFC Vegas 31, we have the opener for the main card. We have Gabriel Benítez versus Billy Quarantillo. Gabriel Benítez 3-2 in his last 5. Billy Quarantillo 4-1 in his last 5, coming off of a decision loss. This is a really interesting matchup. This is a really, really interesting matchup. And I told you at UFC 264, almost none of the underdogs showed up. All the favorites sort of pulled through. That's why when you looked at everybody's DraftKings lineups, pretty much even the winners had a loss in their lineup because you can't afford 6 favorites, and the underdogs didn't really show up. This card, I think, is the opposite. I think there's a ton of underdogs on this card that can all show up. They're all at least live and capable. It's a very, very interesting card as far as underdogs are concerned, and this is an interesting matchup as far as underdogs are concerned. Gabriel Benítez has great kicks, low, high. In general, he has phenomenal kicks. He uses them really well, and he throws them hard to the legs and to the body. He does get hit, and he's not great at backing up, meaning he's not a counter striker. He doesn't like getting bullied. If you're in his face and you bully him, he doesn't like it. He can't really back up, so he can't plant and throw those leg kicks because they're not pepper leg kicks. They do have a good amount of power, and in order to throw that, he needs to plant and turn his hips over. So when he's backing up, he doesn't like that. He's not great at backing up, but he is a very good striker. He does have very good movement in general. As long as he's dictating that movement, he has good movement, and he is very, very fast. His movement and leg kicks will be the biggest issue for Billy with this fight. But Billy Quarantillo is a very good grappler. I would not be surprised if he won this fight by submission, honestly. If he can get it to the ground, I think there's a big gap in their grappling abilities on the ground. But again, Billy Quarantillo, very good grappler with solid takedowns. I don't think he should be an underdog in this fight, honestly. He's also a competent striker. He is incredibly aggressive, and he has some pretty unorthodox striking style, but he's incredibly aggressive on his feet and has very good jiu-jitsu. Styles make fights. You will watch people break down fights. They'll pull up Tapology. Oh, this person's reach, that person's reach. This person throws 72 strikes. That doesn't matter. Styles make fights. In this case, Billy Quarantillo's style of coming forward, heavy forward pressure, Gabriel Benítez's style of not wanting to back up because he needs to plant for those leg kicks, I think it's a clash. I think Billy Quarantillo will get Gabriel to back up. Once he's making him back up, he's not going to have that same pop and oomph on his leg kicks. It's going to put him sort of out of sorts. It's going to make him uncomfortable. And I think Gabriel's going to have a little trouble getting off, finding his rhythm, doing what he needs to do. I have Billy Quarantillo winning this fight. I have in my DraftKings lineup. I have a money line bet on him. Plus 180, almost a 2-to-1 dog. Somebody with his skill sets and his ability, that one was a no-brainer. So I'm all over Billy Quarantillo in this fight. This card, I'm either going to take a bath and my winning streak, my dominant betting streak is going to come crashing down because I'm on so many underdogs, or it's going to be one of the best weeks I've ever had. So I have Billy Quarantillo in this fight. I told you I love him as an underdog. Styles make fights. Pay attention to the styles. I like this matchup for him. $7,700, great price in DraftKings. That strike line is tough, but I'm going to go the more and more. I think it's a war, an absolute war, because Gabriel Benítez is not a bum. This is just a stylistic, tough matchup for him. I'm going more and more. I think Billy comes forward, tons of volume, gets a takedown, tons of volume down there. He could win by submission because there is a big gap on the ground, but I think overall this will go to a decision. Billy Quarantillo, hit these lines. WeWantPicks.com/MKF. WeWantPicks.com/bets. Just go to WeWantPicks.com. Everything you need is right there. Next up at UFC Vegas 31, we have Dan Kramer's buddy Rodolfo Vieira versus Dustin Stoltzfus. And I say Dan Kramer's buddy because in Rodolfo Vieira's last fight, he was an incredible, massive, humongous favorite. And most people were all over him, right? World-level grappler. His nickname is the Black Belt Hunter, and he was fighting a skinny, sort of no defined muscle whatsoever black belt. And the narrative was he's going to blow through this dude. And that's exactly what should have happened. And in the first round, that is what happened. But Rodolfo Vieira has cardio issues like I've never seen. You can't be that massive, that yoked up, have that much muscular sort of fortitude, and his style, because he is very offensive, very big, very heavy, comes forward, explosive. You can't have those two things and cardio. It's not possible. God giveth and God taketh, and he took his cardio away. So real quick, Rodolfo Vieira, 7-1 overall, 4-1 in his last 5. His only loss is that last fight where he came out guns blazing, looked amazing, gassed out big time, and then got submitted. I would not say that submission is any indication of his grappling abilities. It is literally just a red flag for Rodolfo Vieira's cardio is what that submission was. Dustin Stoltzfus, 4-1 in his last 5, 13-2 overall. He is not a bum. He's a very good fighter. This matchup is almost exactly like the last fight. So again, Rodolfo Vieira, this fight is set up exactly like the last one. He is massive. He is crazy strong. He is world-level jiu-jitsu with horrific cardio, but he does have very good wrestling to couple with that jiu-jitsu. He is not Ryan Hall floating around, rolling over himself, embarrassing himself like a little kid in a tumble class. He has explosive double legs, head up the middle, blow right through you for a takedown type takedown offense. Dustin Stoltzfus, he doesn't have that same level of jiu-jitsu, but he is a jiu-jitsu black belt nonetheless. His striking is not great, but he is busy and it is diverse. Again, his jiu-jitsu is very solid, and he is very good in jiu-jitsu off of his back, which I expect him to be in this fight. He's much smaller. He will be weaker. He will be less technical. This is the exact matchup that Rodolfo Vieira lost his last fight. But this is a sucker bet. Do not get sucked into Dustin as an underdog. The money is moving towards Dustin. He was a bigger underdog. It's now starting to come down. So the whole world went to Tapology, went online, watched Rodolfo's last fight, looked at Dustin, looked at Rodolfo's last opponent, said, oh, they're pretty much the same person. And then they bet on Dustin to do it again. Lightning does not strike twice. Rodolfo Vieira is absolutely going to win this fight. And I mentioned it last fight. Styles make fights. Even though Dustin and Rodolfo's last opponent are very similar, the difference is the output. Rodolfo's last opponent just came forward, busy, come forward, refused to quit. They hit the ground. He worked on the ground, worked for sweeps, tried to work his way back to his feet, and exhausted Rodolfo, made Rodolfo work, made Rodolfo just fill those muscles up, blasted through his energy, and just kept coming. And that's why he was able to win. Dustin Stoltzfus is not that person. He doesn't have his own cardio issues, but he doesn't have the same pace or the same output. He's not going to make Rodolfo work that hard. So this is a trap. Styles make fights. Don't get suckered into the underdog here. And I say trap, even though, I mean, Rodolfo Vieira is a 2-1 favorite, but he should be, he is. I actually like the money line on Rodolfo Vieira. I got to look at Rodolfo Vieira by stoppage props because I absolutely think he comes out here, makes a statement. The UFC gave him this matchup to get him back where they want him because this dude is marketable if he wins, and I have him in my lineup. So I mentioned earlier I couldn't decide between Figueiredo or what to do. I swapped Figueiredo for Rodolfo. I think Rodolfo is pretty much a guarantee here, where Figueiredo is also should win, very good chance to win, but I think Rodolfo can get a stoppage earlier. Figueiredo, he's fighting somebody with a suspect chin. It's possible. I already broke that fight down, so check that one out. But Rodolfo Vieira is my pick here. The odds makers got it right. If anything, they're too soft on how good Rodolfo actually is. He's my pick. Monkey knife fight. That's a tough line. More for Rodolfo. I don't know about Dustin. As much as I want you to go to weontpicks.com/MKF and sign up and get ready, this one I'm going to wait to see what happens with this line because I would like a lower line than this or higher so I can make an easy decision. So I'm going to see what happens to this line, where it moves. But for now, I definitely have bets on this fight, all in the Rodolfo Vieira camp. Money line, 250, not great, but he's almost a guarantee. And I'm going to look at those prop bets for stoppages. Next up at UFC Vegas 31, we have Mateusz Gamrot versus Jeremy Stephens. Gamrot, a huge prospect, 4-1 in his last 5. His only loss was a split decision lost about last year. Jeremy Stephens, listen, you don't want me to break down his last 5. 0-4-1 in his last 5. He has not had a good run at it. He's sort of fading, falling off, but he has made some life changes. He has moved to 155. His previous fights were at 145. He's worked up to 155. I imagine he will take that incredible power with him and not take any of the cardio baggage, not take any of that weight cutting baggage with him. And he should be able to come out here with that incredible power, have even more output, more speed, and try to make something happen. With that being said, Mateusz Gamrot is an absolute surging up-and-comer. I honestly think he could be a champion one day. He is that good. Very good, diverse striking, and we saw that in his last fight. He fought Scott Holtzman, who is a very busy, fast, dynamic striker himself, and he worked Scott Holtzman. He doesn't have the power that Jeremy Stephens has. Mateusz doesn't have the power that Jeremy Stephens has, and he's not, I would say he's not really as technical as Jeremy Stephens. Not that Jeremy Stephens is super technical, but he does have a more traditional striking style. Where he sort of loses the technique is when he is killer instinct. If he sees that you're a little wobbled, or that strike landed the way it should have, he will turn it up, and that's when he can get out of his sort of technical striking. But he is a very crisp, clean striker, where Gamrot is a diverse striker. He's not as crisp or as clean and doesn't have as much power as Jeremy Stephens, but he absolutely does have the ability to be a future champion. I mentioned he knocked out Scott Holtzman, who is also a primary striker, and he did that by sort of solid movement, solid output, and sort of mixing things up. He can out-wrestle almost everybody in that division, and his path to victory 100% in this fight, because of Jeremy's power, is avoid the big shots, work in a grappling game plan. He does have good striking, but he will be fighting potentially the most powerful striker in the division, Jeremy Stephens. This is his lightweight debut. He's not cutting as much weight. He's not dropping down to 145. He should keep his power and now add some cardio and gas. What's funny about Jeremy Stephens is we were supposed to see him make his 55 debut, I don't know, a couple months ago. And that was when they did the weigh-ins and he shoved Drakkar Klose, and Drakkar Klose, I don't know, hurt his ankle hurt his neck or some nonsense like that. I loved Jeremy Stephens in that fight. Loved him in that fight. But this isn't that fight. But Jeremy Stephens considers that a win. So I guess if I break down his record again, I could add the shove at the weigh-ins. He's on that 4-fight losing streak. I hate that previous fight was canceled, because I did love Jeremy Stephens in that fight. A ton of power, a ton of experience. He's also famous because he was on the wrong end of the Conor McGregor, who the fuck is that guy? He was on the wrong end of that. But honestly, if Jeremy Stephens knocked Mateusz Gamrot out cold, that would not be very surprising, because he possesses that much power. But that's sort of where this ends. Mateusz Gamrot can beat Jeremy Stephens striking if he really mixes it up. But his path to victory is get it to the ground, smoke him there. I think Gamrot is absolutely going to be something big in this division. He is my play. I have him in my DraftKings lineup. I love that he's only $8,600. I don't have any bets just yet. I'm going to take a look at some of these prop bets. I mean, a Jeremy Stephens knockout prop bet, if it pays out 10-1, I may sprinkle a tiny bit on that, because he's never not in that fight with that power. And I like the more on the strike line here. I do not see Gamrot stopping Jeremy Stephens in the first round. Both of them have pretty good output. I actually love the more here. That line's going to go up. So WeWantPicks.com/MKF. Jump in there, sign up, hit the more here. You will triple your money with a more play. Next up at UFC Vegas 31, and this is not a mistake, I didn't mess up the graphic. We have Miesha Tate in her comeback after, I think, 5 years away from the sport. Miesha Tate versus Marion Renault. We have the former champion coming out of retirement 5 years later to fight a gym teacher, a 40-year-old gym teacher who has lost 4 in a row. And this is a perfect matchup. It's a perfect matchup, genuinely, because we get to see Miesha Tate, what's happened in the last 5 years. Was that break good for her, right? Did she get to heal up and repair and fix some things, and now she's back almost better than ever? Or is she going to have incredible ring rust and look terrible? And Marion Renault, big, strong, tough, not great, just enough to give Miesha Tate some trouble so we can see how good Miesha is. I actually love this matchup. On paper, it looks pretty horrific because Marion Renault is 1-4 in her last 5, coming off of 4 losses, all of them decision losses. She's incredibly tough. She's incredibly huge, incredibly strong. Miesha Tate, 3-2 in her last 5, coming off of 2 losses. But does that even matter? We're talking 5 years ago. Who cares? Who cares? What happened 5 years ago doesn't matter. It's just what's been happening recently. So Miesha Tate, as you know, the former champion, she always had pretty good wrestling, good grappling. She always was competent on her feet, and she is incredibly tough, incredibly tough. And she's never out of a fight. Holly Holm was beating the crap out of her, and she threw up a submission to win the belt, become the champion after getting smoked for, what was it, 3 rounds, 4 rounds? So she's never out of a fight. Marion Renault on the wrong side of 40. She's incredibly tough, ridiculously strong, and has been very active. Very active. For Miesha Tate, obviously not active at all. The problem with Marion is she's not great anywhere. She's pretty good everywhere, not great anywhere. She does have good volume. She has okay striking. She'll never be champion level caliber. And obviously this is her retirement fight. She said it. This is my last fight ever. So really it comes down to the activity. Do you think that Marion Renault's activity, being as busy as she has been and as many camps as she's been in, doing what she's been doing, will that make up for the talent gaps between her and Miesha Tate? Miesha Tate is clearly the more talented fighter, the more accomplished fighter, the more well-rounded fighter, the more skilled fighter. She will not be as strong. And although she has a ton of experience, she absolutely does not have the experience recently. So this is a really hard fight. DraftKings knows it. The betting odds know it. Everybody knows it's a really tough fight. I do have Miesha Tate winning this fight. I have to imagine she would not come back and not be prepared. And yes, there will be rust. It's 5 years. 100%. There'll be nerves. There'll be rust. All sorts of things that she hasn't felt in a very long time. But that's why this is a perfect matchup. She's going to get a really tough opponent who's not dangerous anywhere. Marion Renault's only path to victory would be using her size and strength to just sort of outmuscle and outwork Miesha, push Miesha to the ground, hold her there, keep her against the cage, and beat her up there. And I don't see that happening. Miesha Tate's too capable on the ground. She's too tough to get outworked by Marion Renault. So Miesha Tate's my pick. And honestly, I have her in my DraftKings lineup. I don't love that. That was a budget thing. I don't love it, but she is in there because I do think she wins. She could potentially, if there's a stoppage here, it's Miesha Tate by submission. She's really tough. It'll go the distance. She's always had decent volume. She may come out here with a heavy grappling game plan and get her own takedowns and score those points there. So I have Miesha Tate winning. I don't have a bet. I'm not touching bets for this. The odds are just not good enough. It's too close. Maybe the over on rounds, because this will absolutely be a decision. But I checked those out, and the odds makers know that, and it's like minus 300 to go to a decision. But I do have Miesha Tate in my DraftKings lineup. I think at $8,200. That's not a terrible play because she should score well. And I like the more. I do like the more. Miesha Tate will get into some wars. Marion Renault has no quit. This is her last fight. So I think they'll go at it, and it's definitely going to be 3 rounds. So I like the more. If you want to check out some of the props and get yourself a really solid match, WeWantPicks.com/bets. If you want to triple your money with a fantasy play on Monkey Knife Fights on the strike line, WeWantPicks.com/MKF. Let me know in the comments what you feel about this one. This is one of the more interesting matchups on the card for sure. Next up at UFC Vegas 31, we have Islam Makhachev versus Thiago Moises. Thiago Moises is a guy that we have picked in the past. He was Jacob's lock of the week very early on when Jacob started doing lock of the weeks. And he was a big underdog, and he came through, and he looked amazing, and we all had him to win that fight. This is a very, very different fight. Islam 5-0 in his last 5, 19-1 overall. Thiago 4-1 in his last 5, and his recent loss was a unanimous decision loss. Thiago Moises is super tough. These odds are wrong. The odds are wrong. Period. Like minus 700, Islam is that good. But plus 450, Thiago Moises is not a nobody. This isn't short notice. He's a very competent striker, very competent grappler that absolutely should be getting a little more respect than this. But Islam is an insane wrestler with good hands. He would lose a technical stand-up striking battle against Thiago. Thiago is the more technical stand-up striker. So Islam does need to get this to the ground. When he gets it to the ground, Thiago Moises is an actual threat down there. He doesn't stop. He's always working for a submission. He's got great scrambles. He's coming out of American Top Team, so he's incredibly well prepared. But Islam's wrestling is so freaking good. His hips are so incredible. It almost doesn't matter how well Thiago scrambles because Islam will be there every step of the way. High hips wins, and he will have high hips. Thiago Moises, again, he is a good technical striking. Over the years, he has really developed his striking, and he has become a good technical striker, and he's always been an awesome, very slick, very dangerous BJJ black belt on the ground. We picked him in his last fight as a big-time underdog to win, and he did. Again, this is a very different fight. I don't think he can submit Islam. His only path to victory here would be somehow keep it standing, work the technical striking, and just outpoint Islam by circling and winning a kickboxing match. I just don't see it happening. I just don't. Islam's wrestling is so insane. He has no quit. Very Khabib-esque. He'll just come forward. I actually think his wrestling is more slick than Khabib's. Occasionally, Khabib will take bad shots, and he just gets those takedowns because as soon as he takes a bad one, he just shoots another one, and he chain wrestles. Islam also chain wrestles, but he doesn't need to all the time because his shots are clean and crisp. He's really tough. Islam is the real deal. Islam will be champion at some point. I have Islam to win. Islam is in my DraftKings lineup, but Thiago Moises is one tough SOB. I'm going to look at some props. You're going to get some wild odds on him. I'll take a look, see what we can get. He may be good for a plus 5.5 bet. I always mention the plus 3.5 where you buy a single round on the judges' scorecard. So the fighter can lose a 29-28 decision, but you bought a round, so they then win. With 5-round fights, you can buy 2 rounds. So I think that may be a decent bet. I'll have to look at the odds and see what I can get there. But you can honestly argue the opposite. You can forgive points. If you think somebody's going to blow through somebody, you can give up 3.5 points or give up 5.5 points. If you're that confident in Islam, you may want to give up some points and get really good odds. So either way, check out the props, weonkpicks.com/bets. Monkey knife fight. Oof. I guess I got to go more and more. They will be busy. 51.5 is so low. And I do think this is a longer fight. I don't know if it goes to the decision. It probably will, but it's definitely a longer fight. 51.5 is that's not a lot of strikes over the course of 25 minutes. 118, that is a lot, but Islam is so freaking busy. So busy. More is probably the play here. Triple your money. weonkpicks.com/NKF. Let me know in the comments what you think about this card, what you think about these picks. We'll be doing our DraftKings breakdown. We'll be doing our betting guide, our monkey knife fight breakdown. It was just me for this, but the whole gang will be back together for all of our final videos. I got a work trip. Dan's got a family trip. Jacob couldn't make his schedule work because I changed the schedule. That's on me. Just me for now. Hopefully you got the insight you're always looking for. But we will be back together. We'll be doing our live streams. We'll be doing all of our breakdowns. We'll see you guys there. Let me know in the comments what your picks are. I'm very, very interested.